Okay, so in class on Monday, we introduced how to solve by the factoring method. We'll continue that today. So just a quick recap. So when the equation is equal to 0, so if you have something like x squared plus 12x plus 27 equals 0. So remember we talked about it has to be set equal to 0. Once you set it equal to 0, you are going to factor it. So x times x to make x squared. So it's what multiplies to the back adds to the middle. So it multiplies 27 to 12 would be 9 and 3. And then since we know this times this equals 0, either this has to be 0 or this has to be 0, because then 0 times anything will be 0. So negative 9 would be your first solution. That makes this 0. Negative 3 would be your second solution. Okay, so I'm just going to do a couple quick examples here where it is not set equal to 0. So it's the same process. We're just going to have to do a little bit of work before the problem starts. So let's start with x squared plus 5x plus 4 equals 18. So this expression on the left does factor. So multiplies to 4 and adds to 5 is 4 and 1. So I don't want to put it on my paper, so I'm going to put it right here. So this would factor to this. X plus 4, x plus 1. 4 times 1, 4, 4 plus 1, 5. But the problem is it's not equal to 0. So it's equal to 18. So now we don't know if this times this equals 18, we don't know what to make these values. Like, should I make this 9 and this 2 to make 9 times 2, 18? Should I do 6 times 3? Should I do 1 times 18? So there's all these options to make 18, and we don't know which option to do, which is why we don't want it equal to 18. So instead, we are going to set it equal to 0. So some of these problems, you're going to have to rearrange them to make it equal to 0. So all you have to do is subtract that 18 to get rid of it. And as long as you do it to the left side of the equation, everything will be balanced. So you're going to get 0 over here. You'll still have your x squared, you'll still have your 5x, but now it's 4 minus 18, which is negative 14. So now it's equal to 0. So now you can factor. So it will be what multiplies to negative 14 and adds to 5. That's going to be positive 7 and negative 2. So x equals negative 7. X equals 2. So it's just like before with the factoring, it's just that you have to make sure it's equal to 0. All right, let's do another one here. So x squared plus 3x minus 5 equals 5x plus 30. Okay, so I don't want this 5x plus 30 over here. I want it to be equal to 0, so I'm going to get rid of all this by moving it over. So I'm going to subtract the 5x to get rid of that. Do the same thing over here. Subtract 30 to get rid of that. Do the same thing over here. So 5x minus 5x is 0. 30 minus 30 is 0. So that's just 0. I'll have x squared. 3 minus 5, negative 2x. Negative 5 minus 30 is negative 35. So now it's equal to 0. Now I can factor. So multiplies to negative 35, adds to negative 2, would be negative 7 and positive 5. Now remember, we talked about this in class. Make sure you don't leave it at this step. You haven't solved anything. You've just rewritten it as factored form. You haven't actually said what the solutions are. What does x equal? So what makes this 0? What makes this 0? 7 makes this one 0. Negative 5 makes this one 0. Okay, a couple more quick examples here. 11 minus 4x equals 2x plus 19 plus x squared. Okay, now when you factor, you want the x squared to stay positive. That way when you factor, it's just x times x. You don't have to deal with negatives. So sometimes you'll move stuff to the right side of the equation, and that's fine. So since x squared is positive, I want to keep x squared positive. So I'm going to move everything to the right this time. So I'm going to subtract the 11, subtract the 11. I'm going to add 4x, add 4x. So all this cancels out to 0. And I'm going to go ahead and put everything in order now in standard form. So I'm going to put the positive x squared first, then 2 plus 4, positive 6x, then 19 minus 11, positive 8. So now it's equal to 0. Now I can factor it. So multiplies to 8, adds to 6 would be 4 and 2. So x equals -4, x equals -2. All right, 2 more examples here. So in this one, it's going to have a -x squared. So 12 minus x squared equals 2 minus 3x. So again, I don't want this x squared to be negative because, again, I'm going to put it on this so I don't have to use my paper. If I have a -x squared plus something and I have to factor it, if it's -x squared, now I have to do -x times +x, and that messes up the factoring because then you have a negative in your distribution and you have to do, it almost makes you have to do the opposite of what you need to multiply and add to. So we want to avoid this if possible, the -x squared. So if you have a -x squared, the easiest way to get rid of that is just add it to the other side. It'll cancel it here and move it to the other side, and then that will make it positive. So since I'm getting rid of this, then I also have to get rid of the 12. So minus 12, minus 12. So this all cancels out. I get 0. Again, I'm going to put it in standard form. Positive x squared first, then your -3x, and then 2 minus 12, -10. So now we're ready to go. Factor x multiplies to -10, adds to -3 would be -5 and +2. So x equals 5, x equals -2. All right. And last example, x squared plus 6x plus 3 equals 6x plus 12. All right, so here's the positive x squared, so let's move everything over to that side. So subtract 6x, subtract 6x, subtract 12, subtract 12. So we get x squared. 6 minus 6 is 0, so that's gone. 3 minus 12 is -9 equals 0. Now, this one looks a little bit different because we're missing a term here, but it's important to understand that you can still factor this. So instead of looking at it like this, think of it as 6 minus 6 is 0. So let's think of it like this, 0x minus 9. So it's still the same idea. You're still going to factor. You have your 3 terms, even though one's 0. So you still want to do x times x to get the x squared. So I just need 2 numbers that multiply to -9 and add to 0. So multiplies to -9, adds to 0 is just +3 and -3. 3 times -3 is -9. 3 plus -3 is 0. So even if you're missing that x term, you can still factor. It's just has to be like a 0. So x equals -3, x equals +3. Now, one final note here. When we got to this step right here, so let me again kind of cover it up with my Post-it note here. You could do the square root method now, because remember, if there's no x, you can do the square root method. So you also could have done +9 plus 9, x squared equals 0 plus 9, which is 9. Square root, x equals plus or minus square root of 9 is 3. So you also could have done the square root method there, and you get positive and -3, which again is the same thing as what we got over here, positive and -3. Okay, so that's just kind of a quick overview of how to solve by factoring when it's not equal to 0. Rearrange it, set it equal to 0, and solve. So you're going to have an assignment posted to Delta Math that practices problems like this. It'll be due on Friday, and then when we meet again on Friday, we'll continue on with factoring problems that have a number with the x squared, like a 2x squared or a 3x squared, which means we'll have to do it a little bit differently. But that wraps up what I need you to get through for today. So complete your Delta Math assignment by Friday.